Why is it that some people, no matter how obvious their manipulation seems, still manage to get under your skin, twist your words, and leave you questioning your own reality? How is it that they can smile to your face while quietly controlling your emotions, your choices, even your peace of mind? The truth is, manipulators don't win because they're smarter. They win because they know exactly how to make you doubt yourself. But what if you could flip the game? What if you could stay calm, clear, and untouchable, no matter what mind games they play? In this video, you're going to learn 9 Stoic-inspired psychological strategies that turn their manipulative tactics into dead ends. You'll learn how to recognize their patterns, set unbreakable boundaries, stay emotionally steady, and let real consequences do the talking. These aren't just tips. They're mental weapons used by some of the strongest thinkers in history to protect their peace and power in a world full of deception. So stay with me, and make sure you hit subscribe if you're ready to reclaim control and outsmart anyone who tries to manipulate you. Number 1. Recognize manipulative patterns before they hook you. Manipulators don't start with insults. They don't begin with attacks. They begin with attention, with flattery, with questions that seem harmless, even caring. They make you feel seen, chosen, important. They offer themselves as someone who gets you when others don't. And they do it with such calculated patience that you rarely notice what's actually happening. You're being studied. Every manipulator is a quiet, observer first. Before they strike, they gather information. Your strengths, your insecurities, your blind spots. They do this by making you feel safe. They disarm you with words like, "I just want the best for you," or "You're not like the others." They create the illusion that they're a rare ally, someone who understands your pain, your dreams, or your struggles more deeply than anyone else. But here's where Stoicism draws the line. Marcus Aurelius, the Emperor of Rome, wrote in his private journals, "Be on your guard, stand firm, be not deceived by reputation, by wealth, or by influence." He knew that most of the people who smiled in his face had an agenda. He trained himself not to be flattered by words or appearances. Because the moment you accept someone's words without questioning their motive, you give them the keys to your mind. Epictetus, the slave-turned-philosopher, taught a similar lesson. He said, "First, say to yourself what you would be. Then, do what you have to do." In other words, define yourself first, your values, your boundaries, your purpose, before you let anyone else shape your thoughts or actions. Manipulators thrive on making you forget that. They want you to second-guess yourself, so you'll lean on them for validation. But when you already know who you are, their approval means nothing. This is why recognizing patterns is the first defense. It's not enough to spot a single manipulative moment. You have to see the whole strategy. Are they always offering too much praise too quickly? Do they ask questions that seem a little too personal, a little too early? Do they make you feel like you owe them something just for being kind? Do they try to isolate you emotionally, making you feel like they're the only one who understands? This is where the Stoic practice of observation without judgment becomes your greatest weapon. You don't need to react. You don't need to confront them right away. You simply need to see. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Your strength lies in your ability to pause, to step back, and to analyze what's really going on without being swept away by emotion. The moment you start recognizing their behavior as a pattern, not as isolated acts of kindness, you take back control. Because manipulation only works when you don't see the game. But when you do, when you watch with clarity, when you question their motives without reacting, you become impossible to fool. You stop playing their game without them even realizing it, and that, in the Stoic sense, is victory. Not in overpowering them, not in shaming them, but in owning yourself so fully that no one can quietly lead you where you don't want to go. Number 2, say no with conviction, and say it without explaining yourself. If there is one thing manipulators fear more than exposure, it's a person who can say no without guilt. Why? Because manipulators rely on your hesitation. They depend on your discomfort. They thrive on that small crack of uncertainty you show when you feel pressured to explain yourself, to soften your boundaries, or to keep the peace. But here's what the Stoics teach us. Saying no is not selfish. It is an act of self-respect. Epictetus reminds us that no man is free who is not master of himself. And part of mastering yourself is knowing when to close the door, to stop justifying, to stop apologizing, to stop explaining your boundaries to people who have no right to demand explanations from you in the first place. Think about how often you've said yes just to avoid conflict. How often you've agreed to something small, thinking it's harmless, only to find yourself trapped in something much bigger. Manipulators are patient. They start with small requests, knowing that once you say yes once, it becomes harder for you to reverse course later. This is called the foot in the door technique, and it works on people who feel guilty for saying no. Marcus Aurelius warned himself daily to act according to nature, which means living in alignment with your principles, not the demands of others. He wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." Notice what's missing here? He doesn't add, "unless they pressure you," or "unless they guilt you," or "unless you're afraid they'll be upset." No. The Stoic way is direct, firm, and free of emotional entanglement. Saying no is powerful because it cuts through manipulation like a blade. It sends a message that you know where you stand, and you're not available for negotiation. You are not required to explain your reasoning. You are not responsible for how they feel about your refusal. As Epictetus taught, when you say no, say it with your whole chest without trembling, without needing to dress it up with justifications. Because the second you begin to explain, manipulators will listen, not to understand, but to find a new way in. This is why clarity and brevity are your best friends. No, that doesn't work for me. Full stop, no apology, no story, no nervous laughter. And when they push back, as manipulators always do, you hold your ground, not with louder words, but with calm repetition. Say it again if you must. And again. But never change your position because of their discomfort. The Stoics remind us that you can't control what people think about your no, and you shouldn't try. Your only duty is to protect your inner fortress, your peace, your principles, your time, and your energy. Every time you say no with conviction, without guilt, you reinforce that fortress. And little by little, manipulators learn that you are not an easy target. You are not a door they can walk through. You are the door that stays locked to anyone who doesn't respect your boundaries. That is what Stoic freedom looks like. The freedom to stand your ground, not with aggression, but with calm, unwavering certainty. Number 3, choose distance over drama. Silence is a power move. Manipulators thrive on drama, on emotional reactions, on pulling you into arguments where they control the narrative. They provoke you just enough to make you lash out, So later they can say, "Look how unstable you are." Or they draw you into endless emotional discussions that go nowhere, making you feel exhausted and confused while they sit back, quietly winning control over your peace. But here's the insight the Stoics give us: you don't have to show up to every battle you're invited to. In fact, the wisest move is often to leave the field entirely. Marcus Aurelius said it with brutal clarity: "The best way to avenge yourself is to not be like your enemy." This means refusing to let someone drag you down to their level. It means refusing to let someone make you perform, explain, defend, or justify yourself in their emotional arena. The moment you step into their chaos, you're already playing their game, and manipulators are masters of that game. Stoicism teaches that true strength lies in what you can walk away from. Seneca reminds us that no man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself. What does this mean in practice? It means you prove your strength not by winning every argument, but by choosing when not to engage at all. Distance is power. When you choose silence over reaction, you shift the power dynamic. You show that you don't need their validation. You don't need to defend yourself. You don't need their permission to move on. You create psychological space, and in that space, they lose their grip on you. Most people think walking away is weakness. That's exactly why manipulators hate it. They expect you to keep explaining, keep fighting, keep chasing their approval. Because as long as you do, they still control your emotional energy. They still have you hooked. But when you stop answering their calls, stop replying to their bait, stop participating in their theater, you win. Not because you crush them in an argument, but because you refuse to give them the one thing they need to stay relevant in your life: your attention. The Stoics practiced mental distancing every day. Marcus Aurelius would remind himself that people's opinions were nothing more than sounds in the air unless he gave them meaning. And that's the key. You decide what gets to live in your mind. You decide who deserves your energy. You decide whether someone's behavior gets to steal your peace. So the next time someone tries to draw you into their chaos, pause. Remember, their drama is their prison. You don't have to live there with them. You can step back, stay silent, and walk away with your dignity intact. Because real power isn't proved in emotional combat. It's proved in your freedom to leave the game entirely. Number 4. Draw and defend clear boundaries. Your peace depends on it. Manipulators don't just cross boundaries. They test them first. They start small. A little disrespect here, a small violation there. They push to see how much you'll tolerate. And every time you let it slide, they push further. It's never one giant betrayal. It's death by 1,000 small cuts. Until one day you wake up realizing you've become someone you don't recognize, living by someone else's script, not your own. Stoicism teaches that your boundaries are your moral duty to yourself. They are not optional. They are not up for debate. And they are not about controlling others. They're about protecting the space in which you can live virtuously, honestly, and peacefully. Epictetus said it best: "Keep your will in harmony with nature." What does that mean? It means you alone are responsible for shaping the conditions of your inner life. Your time, your attention, your mental clarity. These are limited resources. And anyone who tries to demand more than you're willing to give is violating the very essence of your freedom. Most people believe boundaries are about confrontation, but that's a mistake. The Stoics show us that boundaries begin with clarity, not conflict. You don't set boundaries to change them. You set them to protect you. You draw the line not because you're trying to punish anyone, but because you value your peace more than their approval. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If someone does wrong, it is their problem, not yours, unless you let it become yours." Let that sink in. People will push, they will manipulate, they will test your limits, but their behavior is their business. Your business is to stand firm without wavering, without explaining, without justifying. Your boundary should be like a wall, clear, visible, and unmoving. And here's the Stoic twist. You must defend that wall consistently. Manipulators don't stop because you say no once. They circle back. They test again, often when you're tired, stressed, or emotionally worn down. That's why the Stoics practiced repetition. Every day they reminded themselves of who they were and what they stood for. Marcus Aurelius journaled daily, preparing himself to meet liars, schemers, and flatterers. Not because he hated them, but because he refused to let their behavior rewrite his values. So how do you defend your boundaries in real life? You name them clearly. You state them once. And when they are crossed, you act, not argue. You distance yourself. You withdraw. Access. You let consequences, not arguments, do the talking. You don't explain your worth. You don't negotiate your dignity. You live by the line you have drawn. Because at the end of the day, as Epictetus reminds us, you may fetter my leg, but not even Zeus can get the better of my will. Your boundaries are sacred, not because others recognize them, but because you enforce them. And when you do, you reclaim the one thing manipulators fear most, a life governed by your own values, not theirs. Number 5, guard the truth with clarity. Because manipulators distort reality. One of the oldest tricks manipulators use is confusion. They twist conversations. They deny things they once clearly said. They change small details just enough to make you second-guess what really happened. This is how they gaslight you, not by offering obvious lies, but by slowly eroding your trust in your own memory, your own senses, your own judgment. You've probably heard them say things like, "I never said that. You're overreacting. That's not what I meant, you misunderstood." These phrases are designed to plant seeds of doubt, not in them, but in you. And once they succeed in making you unsure of what's true, they own the narrative. They can rewrite the past. They can paint themselves as the victim. They can frame you as unstable, unreasonable, or even cruel. The Stoics, however, were obsessed with preserving clarity. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you are pained by any external thing, it is not this thing that disturbs you, but your own judgment about it." What he meant was simple but profound. Your suffering increases when you let your mind become fogged, twisted, or manipulated by false interpretations. This is why guarding the truth is not just self-defense. It is a moral obligation. The Stoics taught that clarity is the foundation of a virtuous life. You cannot act wisely if you do not see reality as it is, and manipulators specialize in making reality feel slippery. The Stoic practice of keeping a journal was their way of fighting this. Marcus Aurelius didn't just write to inspire himself. He wrote to document reality. He recorded what happened, what he felt, what he observed in others. Why? Because writing things down forces you to face the facts without distortion. It gives you something to return to when your memory or emotions are under attack. In modern terms, this means documenting your interactions. Save the messages, write down what was said, Keep records of important agreements, not because you plan to fight or argue, but because you refuse to let anyone rewrite reality to their advantage. And here's the deeper Stoic insight. You must also guard the truth in your own mind. It's easy to let your emotions color the facts. It's tempting to soften or rewrite the truth to avoid discomfort. But the Stoics teach that peace comes only when you face reality head-on, no matter how unpleasant. As Seneca wrote, "It is not because things are difficult that we do not dare. It is because we do not dare that things are difficult. So dare to record the truth as it is, without drama, without exaggeration, and without fear. Dare to hold yourself accountable, even when you're tempted to bend the facts to make yourself feel better. Dare to revisit the truth when manipulators try to confuse you with their twisted versions of events. Because the moment you own the facts, you own the power. Manipulators can only win when the truth gets blurry, but when you protect the truth with unshakable clarity, they have nowhere left to hide. Number 6, anchor yourself with purpose, so no one can sway you. One of the most subtle tactics a manipulator uses is to make you forget why you started. They don't come at you with force. They come at you with distraction. They slowly shift your focus away from what truly matters to you and toward what benefits them. They make their priorities feel like your responsibilities. They make their emotional needs feel like your personal mission. And if you're not grounded, you start living reactively, constantly adjusting to their mood swings, their silent treatments, their fake crises. You wake up one day realizing you've drifted so far from your true path that you barely recognize yourself anymore. The Stoics warned us about this very danger. Marcus Aurelius, despite being the most powerful man in the Roman Empire, wrote repeatedly about his need to stay true to his nature. He reminded himself that his position, his status, and other people's opinions were external. They were not who he was. His identity, his peace, and his purpose had to come from within. That's why he wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And this you have the power to revoke at any moment." What does that mean for you? It means that manipulators can only control you if you allow them to redefine your mission. If you don't know what you stand for, you will end up standing for what they want you to stand for. You'll spend your energy solving their problems, chasing their approval, or defending yourself against their false narratives. All of this keeps you stuck in their frame, not your own. That's why Stoic practice begins with knowing your purpose. Not once, not vaguely, but clearly and deliberately. What do you value most? What are you building your life toward? What kind of person do you want to become? The clearer you are about these questions, the harder it becomes for anyone to pull you off course. But knowing your purpose is only the first step. You must anchor yourself to it every single day. That's what Marcus Aurelius did through his journaling. He wrote not to impress others, but to sharpen his own clarity. He prepared himself each morning to face flattery, manipulation, criticism, and pressure, because he knew these forces were unavoidable. But by returning to his purpose, he made himself unmovable. So here's your practice. Take time to define your values. Write them down where you can see them. Remind yourself daily what you are living for. Not for approval, not for comfort, not for status, but for inner integrity. And when someone tries to pull you into their emotional games, stop and ask, does this serve my purpose or theirs? If it doesn't serve your purpose, you let it go. You walk away without guilt. You protect your time, your mind, and your energy like they are sacred territory, because they are. As Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." And mastery begins the moment you stop letting other people decide where your life is going. Stay anchored, stay steady, and watch how quickly manipulators lose interest when they realize you're no longer drifting toward them. You're rooted in something they can't touch. Number 7. Own your role fully, so they can't control the narrative. One of the oldest manipulative tactics in human history is narrative control. Manipulators know that facts alone don't control people. Stories do. They quietly shape how others see you. They twist events to make themselves look innocent and you look unreasonable. They highlight your mistakes, exaggerate your reactions, and frame themselves as the victim while you become the aggressor. You've probably experienced this before. You try to defend yourself, but the more you explain, the deeper the trap feels. It's as if no matter what you say, they already own the story, and you're playing a part you never agreed to. This is exactly why the Stoics taught us to focus not on reputation, but on character. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, "It never ceases to amaze me. We all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinions than our own." In other words, when you care too much about how others perceive you, you give away your power. You become desperate to correct the narrative. You fight to be understood. You defend yourself again and again, hoping to fix the way you're being portrayed. But in doing so, you step into the manipulator's trap, because now they control the frame and you're just reacting to it. The Stoic solution is as brutal as it is liberating. You must stop trying to control the story out there, and instead, own the reality in here, in your mind, in your character, in your choices. You must take full accountability not for how others see you, but for what you've actually done or failed to do. You must own your role completely, even when it's uncomfortable. Epictetus put it this way: if someone points out your fault, do not make excuses. Say instead, "If only you knew the rest." What does that mean? It means real strength is being able to say, "Yes, I made that mistake, and I'm responsible for it. Period." No excuses, no story spinning, no blame shifting, because when you own your role fully, manipulators lose their leverage. They can no longer weaponize your mistakes against you, because you've already claimed them. But it goes even deeper. When you stand firm in what is true, both the good and the bad, you become impossible to frame. People may lie about you. They may twist your story. But deep down, you know who you are. You've already faced the truth of your actions. You've already corrected what you can control, and you've released what you cannot. This is the Stoic practice of self-possession, to be so rooted in your own integrity that you no longer need to chase explanations or defend your name. You live according to your principles, not according to their narrative. And you accept that not everyone will see you clearly. That's okay. As Seneca wrote, "A good character once established is not easily overthrown." Your job is to maintain that character, not to manipulate your image. So stop giving manipulators free rent in your mind. Stop feeding their story with your emotional reactions. Stop explaining yourself to people who have already decided who they want you to be. Instead, own your role fully. Own what's true. Own your growth. And let the rest collapse under the weight of its own lies. Because at the end of the day, the only story that truly matters is the one you live, not the one they tell. Number 8. Master your reactions. Because emotional control is real power. Manipulators don't need facts to control you. They only need your reactions. The louder you defend yourself, the more you look unstable. The angrier you get, the easier. You are to frame as the problem. The more you explain, the more they twist your words. Manipulators are never in a hurry to prove you wrong. They just need you to overreact. Because the moment you lose emotional control, they win psychological control. That's why the Stoics place such incredible value on mastering your responses. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Notice he didn't say you have power over what people say or do. You don't. But you do have complete control over how you respond. This is what separates the manipulated from the master of himself. Emotional mastery doesn't mean you don't feel anger or frustration. The Stoics never taught us to be robots. What they taught is to feel fully, but choose wisely. Epictetus said, "If someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation." That sounds harsh, but it's true. People can push every button you have, but they cannot make you respond unless you give them that permission. They cannot force you to lose control unless you hand it over willingly. The true Stoic strategy is to pause before you react. That pause might last a second or a minute, but in that space, you reclaim your power. You buy yourself time to ask better questions. What outcome do I actually want? Is reacting emotionally going to get me closer to that or further away? You shift your focus from "how do I win this moment?" to "how do I win my peace?" And sometimes, winning means saying nothing at all. Silence is not weakness. It's a calculated move. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself often that silence is a form of judgment. It shows that you see the game being played, but refuse to participate on their terms. It leaves the manipulator stranded, because without your reaction, they have nothing. To escalate, mastering your reactions doesn't just protect you from manipulation. It gives you something even greater: freedom. Freedom from being pulled into every emotional storm. Freedom from being controlled by someone else's chaos. Freedom to live by your principles, not by the bait they dangle in front of you. And here's what manipulators fear most: a person who stays calm when they expect you to break down. A person who speaks with clarity when they expect you to lose control. A person who doesn't flinch when provoked. That kind of person is unplayable. And that's who you become when you master your reactions. Not once, but over and over again, until emotional control becomes second nature. So next time someone tries to push you to your edge, remember, your reaction is your power, and the one who keeps it, keeps control. Number 9, let consequences speak. Because boundaries without enforcement are just noise. Manipulators don't believe what you say. They believe what you allow. You can tell them your boundaries 1,000 times, but if you never enforce them, they learn one thing: you don't really mean it. This is why manipulators keep testing you. Not because they didn't hear you the first time, but because they want to see if you'll actually follow through when they push again. This is where most people fail. They set boundaries, but when those boundaries are crossed, they fall into endless warnings, emotional arguments, or desperate explanations. The manipulator watches you squirm, knowing you're afraid to actually walk away, to cut ties, or to allow the real consequences to unfold. They know that your words are cheap if your actions don't back them up. But the Stoics knew better. They knew that reality doesn't respond to noise, it responds to action. Epictetus taught, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it." That means you don't need to convince manipulators of anything. You don't need to prove you have boundaries. You need to live them. You need to let your silence, your distance, and your absence speak louder than any words ever could. Marcus Aurelius also warned that action, not intention, is what defines a person's character. He wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what good man should be. Be one." The same applies to boundaries. Stop arguing for them. Be the person who enforces them without drama, without negotiation, without hesitation. So how do you let consequences speak? You make the outcome inevitable. If someone crosses the line, you don't threaten, you act. You reduce access, you withdraw your energy. You stop explaining. You let them experience the natural result of their behavior. If they disrespect your time, you stop giving it. If they violate your trust, you stop trusting them. If they test your patience one too many times, you walk away without announcing your exit like it's a performance. And here's the secret. The more you live by your boundaries, the fewer words you'll ever need. People learn quickly when their manipulation is met with action, not emotion. They realize you're not just someone who talks about self-respect. You practice it. You embody it. You enforce it. Seneca put it perfectly when he wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." We imagine that enforcing boundaries will lead to unbearable conflict. But more often than not, when you follow through without fear, manipulators back off faster than you expected. They thrive on your hesitation, not your clarity. So the next time someone crosses the line, don't argue, don't warn, don't beg them to understand. Let the consequences do the talking, stand firm, enforce the boundary, and move on without guilt. Because when people realize you don't just say you have limits, you actually live by them, you become untouchable. And that is the highest form of personal power the Stoics could ever teach you. Not the power to control others, but the unshakable strength to control yourself. So here's the truth most people never realize. Manipulators don't win because they're smarter. They win because you react on their terms. They win because you forget that your greatest power isn't in what you say, but in what you choose not to tolerate. It's in your ability to stay calm when they expect you to break. It's in your silence when they expect you to explain. And it's in your consistent actions when they expect you to back down. The Stoics didn't teach us to fight every battle. They taught us to control the one thing that truly matters, ourselves. And when you master that, no manipulator can touch you, because you don't give them the fuel they need to win. You hold your frame. You protect your peace. You let them destroy themselves with their own games, while you rise above it all, untouched and unbothered. If you found this video helpful, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss another lesson on reclaiming your mind, your peace, and your personal power. Thanks for watching, and remember, the one who stays calm wins, always.